Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a review of a game called Dragon Castle. This one is from CMON and Horrible Games. We just had a chance to play this at CMON Expo just a couple weeks ago. It was out in Essen last year, but it's finally making its way to the States. This is a 2 to 4 player Mahjong-inspired tile placement game where you're pulling tiles and building your own little structure in front of you.
Yeah, and you guys haven't played Mahjong before. This is a ancient Chinese game that came around the turn of the 20th century. So it's a very old game.
Yeah, for sure. This is a new twist on it, for sure.
So let's talk about all the different components, and we'll talk about the actual game itself. So you have a central board in the center, and this is going to change depending upon the number of players that are participating. You're just going to look in the upper left-hand corner and put that board. We have a 4-player game set up, so we're using this board. Underneath this board, you're going to see a number of numbers. We've already laid out the Mahjong tiles, but underneath here it says either 1, 2, or 3, and that tells you how high to stack these randomly at the start of the game. So you can put them all face down and turn them up as you go, or put them in a bag, however you so wish to order them.
And it's really cool too because there's a few different boards like that, but there's even more ways to set up the initial setup. In the manual, you can look in there and see all sorts of different ways. And then further, there's one board that lets you basically do it freestyle if you want to try that.
So the Mahjong tiles themselves, there's 6 different varieties of tiles, and they do have a thematic representation. There's things like seasons and dragons and weathers and so forth. However, what you're basically looking at is either the symbol on the tile or the actual symbol plus how many of those particular things there are. So you may have some different types of tiles that may show like seasons and have suns on the tiles, or you may have stuff like bamboo that has either 2 or 4 sticks of bamboo on them. Also, you can possibly, if you so wish to use, there's some extra cards off to the sides that can change the gameplay quite dramatically. You have spirits, which can change the way you take your turn within a game, and then you have dragon cards, and these affect in-game scoring because they kind of give you a path by which to build the tiles on your player board.
Yeah, and you can play with these, or you don't have to play with these, and in fact, after you have a few games under your belt, they suggest you could even play with multiple of these just to make it that much variable when you play.
And typically you're only going to use one of each, so 1 spirit and 1 dragon. You have a number of victory points. These are going to be collected either in-game or at the end of the game. You have shrine tiles, or shrine caps. These basically are going to lay on top of the tiles that you've built within your player board itself. Also, each player is going to have a player board in front of them. It's the same for every single player. This is where you're going to be placing all of your different tiles that you collect.
Yeah, you're going to be placing your tiles throughout the game here. You're also going to be storing your shrines as you collect those, because there's an actual specific action that you're going to be taking that allows you to flip these tiles once you've sort of collected a certain amount. We'll get to that in a second. And then add the shrines, which are also going to have some variable scoring at the end of the game.
Each player is also going to be given a player aid. On the player aid, one side shows you the 3 possible actions that you can take, with a 4th action that's triggered by a game event. And on the other side, it's going to tell you how you score your points and how to manipulate the board when you do score those points. The final set of components are these dragon tiles at the bottom. You're going to lay these out, one in each of these different spots. With the residual going on to the far left. Again, this is going to change depending upon the number of players. Basically, these are victory points that you can collect, again, once a certain point of the game has been triggered. So the game is very simple. We've already started the game, so we have a game in progress.
Yeah, we have about 1 round under our belts here.
So on your turn, you're allowed 1 of 3 different actions. I'll talk about the first action. It's probably the most common action you're going to take. You are allowed to take any one of the top tiles. Now remember, these are 3 layered, but they have to be from the outside. So you can't take something that's surrounded on the inside by other Mahjong tiles.
Right, and you can't also take tiles from the top or the bottom. You need to pull off sort of east and west.
Yes. So this one doesn't have anything on the left and the right, so I could take this blue one. And then also I can take anywhere else, but the first one that you take always has to be from the top layer that's available. So you're always going to pick from the 3rd layer until it's gone, and then from the 2nd layer, and then from the bottom layer. So I'll take this one and this one. Once you collect these 2 tiles, you're then allowed to place them anywhere that you so wish on your board. Typically what you want to do is try to build sets. And to build sets, these sets can score you more points the more tiles that you have within that set. A set's always, the least amount you can have is 4. And then it goes up to whatever amount you want to flip at that specific time. To create a set, everything in that group has to be orthogonal to other tiles in that group. So if I were to lay these 2 right here, it immediately triggers a scoring action in there. However, if I had moved it right here, I don't have a contiguous 4 tiles in that area, so it would not trigger in that case. If you do trigger, you're going to flip all the tiles that scored in that instance, and you're going to look at the back side of your card and see how many victory points that's going to score you for doing so. Again, the more that you can get flipped at one particular time, the more victory points that you get to score. The next thing that happens is you get to look at the type of tile that you flipped. There's rarities in these. And you have 3 types of rarities. You have level 1, level 2, and level 3. And they all trigger different types of things when you flip them.
Yeah, the least rare or most common tiles when you flip them, these are going to be the greens, the yellows, and the reds. When you flip those, you're simply going to score your points, and you're then allowed to add one of the shrine tiles, if you want to, on top of the tiles that you just flipped. And that's important. It has to be the tiles just flipped that you're adding to. The second colors are black and blue. Same thing, but this allows you to add 2 shrines. And again, these shrines have to come from your own personal pool. You can't be grabbing shrines from the general supply. And then finally, if these pink dragon tiles are flipped, you're able to add, again, 2 shrines from your supply, and you get a bonus victory point.
Right. Again, the more tiles that you flip, the better. However, there is a cap. Once you hit 8 tiles that you flip in one particular turn, each additional one's only scoring you 1 extra victory point. So 8's kind of the sweet spot that you want to flip it in a given time. All right, so that's the first possible action that you can take. The second action is to actually take a tile and a shrine piece as well.
Yeah, this is even simpler than the first action. You're just taking 1 available tile from the top stack of the central board and a shrine. This is your main way of collecting these shrine caps. So I could take this pink, add it to my board wherever I want again, place the shrine there. This is where you're going to be able to sort of potentially start to build those bigger regions. So you're not going to be placing 2 right next to ones that you already have, but I could place this here. I don't have 4 contiguous, so they're not going to flip. I could also place it here and really try to build out something much bigger.
Now, one thing we forgot to mention is when you add these shrine tiles to your board, you can never place them on top of other unfinished shrine tiles. So what that basically means is if I took this red one, I can't place it on top of one that has not been flipped at that given time. However, once you're flipped, you can start building higher because the shrines, as they go up in level, they create more victory points for you at the end of the game.
Yeah, these open up opportunities for using one color to basically build a base floor, flip it, and then having started another color, finish that one off on top of the previously flipped tiles and getting it higher and higher and higher.
And the last thing you can do is kind of a blocking move within the game. You can take any one of the tiles, again, from the highest level, outside in, take that tile, discard it out of the game, and then collect a victory point. This is a great way to block people from being able to do specific moves that are going to allow them to score a lot of victory points.
Yeah, not only that, but the difference between taking 2 tiles, which Jeremy said is the main action most people are going to be taking, and the second 2 actions that allow you to take just 1 or discard 1, it staggers the timing with respect to how this central board is going to be depleted. Because there's going to be times where you don't want your opponents to get first crack at that next layer.
Yeah.
So you might want to take 1 tile and sacrifice it even though you could have taken 2.
Right, and there is actually a 4th action that will be available at a very specific point in the game. Once the 3rd and the 2nd level are depleted, then players can start taking these dragon tiles instead of doing one of those other 3 actions. This is an end of the game trigger. They're all worth 2 victory points. However, when it's met to a certain point, being the exclamation mark, that's going to trigger the end of the game.
Yeah, so once you feel like you're in the lead, you could just simply start taking those, again, once you're at that bottom layer, collecting points, forcing the end of the game before everyone else achieves maybe some of the things they were working on.
There's also a natural way for the game to end, and that's if all the tiles have been depleted, of course. Now, the 2 things that we forgot to mention, or we actually mentioned at the very beginning, are the spirits. These spirits allow you to kind of do something extra on your turn, and that's usually by sacrificing one of your unbuilt tiles from your player board to do some special action.
Yeah, you can also discard one of your unused shrines from your shrine pool. And in some cases, you might find yourself with a number of shrines over here that you may not be likely to place by the end of the game, so they can become a bit of a currency to use that spirit card.
Right, so once the game is triggered, you're going to add up all the different victory points. A lot of people are going to be collecting the victory points in-game from being able to flip these tiles over, depending upon however many sets they've collected. However, there's in-game victory points that you can score as well. Any of the dragon tiles that you have collected are going to be added to your in-game scoring, and then depending on how high the level of the shrines are that you have, are going to score you either 1 for a level 1 shrine, 2 for a level 2 shrine, and 3 for a level 3 shrine.
Right. It's important to note that it caps at that. So if you build a level 4 shrine, you're still only getting 3 points.
Yeah.
And then finally, like Jeremy said, that dragon card is going to give you some potential endgame points. This one, for instance, gives us extra points for any shrine built on the outside edge.
All right. So this is a review. Well, what are your thoughts?
I really like it.
Yeah.
When I first saw this game, I thought, and a lot of people will feel this way, I think a lot of people see this and go, okay, I played Azul last year. This has a lot of tiles. I'm taking tiles and placing them on my board. And that is true. And I would say, in a very, very basic sense, the same satisfaction that you get out of the puzzle of doing that is very similar. So I would say if you like that game, you'll probably like this. But this is definitely inspired by Mahjong, and it's definitely a different type of game. It still will give you that same satisfaction. These tiles are excellent. They are nice, chunky tiles. They're not ceramic, but the game would cost a lot if they were.
They have texture on both sides too, which is great. So they're easy to hold. And
exactly. They're very nicely done. The components in this game are really well done. Even these shrine caps are really very well done. Just like any CMON game, really.
Yeah. I have a pro and a con. They kind of fall in line with each other. I love the game as a 2-player game because you have a much easier time fulfilling the things you want to do, blocking players from doing specific actions. However, in a 4-player game, that's kind of lost normally because the time that it gets back around to you, what you've been doing with the board can change quite dramatically. So the plans that you make at the very start of the game, either collecting common, rare, or somewhere in between specific type of tiles, the board can change quite dramatically by that point. Plus, in a 2-player game, you can start manipulating the board in a very specific way to block other players from doing things and kind of time it to your way. But the same thing happens with the other player, so it's kind of a tug of war in that aspect, which I enjoy more. That
satisfaction of a tug of war, kind of like you'd get with a Seven Wonders Duel or any good 2-player game, really does shine at this at 2 players. And like you said, I think you'd lose some of that at 4 players. I still think it plays really well, and it plays, no matter what player count, this game's going to play quickly because the tiles are what they are. And no matter how quick, when you get down to that lower level, someone's going to start taking these tiles at the bottom and the game's going to end. So I don't see the gameplay extending significantly with 4 players compared to 2.
The other great thing about the game, too, is that it's completely abstract, which means that, and typically in these abstract games, it's got a long shelf life. You have a complete variety in the way these tiles come out every single time that you play. And then you have different combinations of these spirits and dragons. And as David alluded to at the very beginning, you're supposed to play with one of each. However, you can play with as many as you wish, just opening up the gameplay infinitely.
Yeah, one other thing I'll say that I really like about this game, and like many games, when I play this with new players, I really enjoy those things that I see players having a lot of fun with. And one of those things is when you first start playing this, people will maybe simply take 4 tiles instantly, flip them over, and then when you see people realize, oh, I see how I can build these tiles to really extend it and get more points, it's fun to see people discover that, especially kids. And then, on top of all of that, no pun intended, when you start realizing how you can flip these tiles and then stagger buildings so that you're building on top of other tiles that you've already flipped, to really maximize the points on these shrines, that becomes a lot of fun because it can set up some really cool and very satisfying turns.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other cool part about it too, is that you can spread out on the board and take that kind of strategy, or you can just centralize in one area and then build up and try to piggyback off each other to score your points. So it's a very cool game, and as David said, look at all these different setups that you can do. With that 3rd board that's in the game, you can basically set up any kind of variable that you wish right from the start.
Yeah, you can, and I know they have a number of promos too, so I could imagine there will be even user-generated, options in that respect.
Very cool abstract game from CMON, also from Horrible Games. It is 2 to 4 players, plays in, 30 minutes, 45 minutes?
45 minutes.
Quick in and out. If you guys have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, everything else that we do, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.